Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here and seeing so many faces and people I've not met before and some people I've met before. We're delighted to be here today. My name is Magdalena. I am the current chair of SEDA and I have been asked by Nick to help to chair this gathering celebrating life and career of Jim Johnston, who was an architect, an activist and an educator, as you can see. And I'm sure that many of you have met Jim. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting Jim in person, only met him through some of the discussion around KG Award. I teach at RGU, so again, this is, I mean, once you're an educator, it's in you, isn't it? Is that reciprocal relationship between receiving and giving the knowledge, and Jim was definitely that. Right, okay, thanks to WASPs for facilitating the event and letting us look around Briggait later this afternoon after all the talks. So, just a quick overview. I'm very lucky because Nick provided me with this script. Scottish Ecological Design Association is really proud. We are very proud to host this event. The celebration of the life and legacy of SEDA co-founder, architect, activist and educator Jim Johnston. We're hosting it here at the Briggait, the category A-listed gathering space of studios and offices, which owes its survival and flowering to the foresight and persistence of Jim and his colleagues. Jim was one of the first architects to realise and act upon the climate crisis, both in his architectural practice and education. He was a co-founder of Assist Architects and working with communities across Glasgow. He helped instigate Glasgow's flourishing community-based housing movement, and his interest and influence reached far beyond to historic buildings, the cultural heritage that shapes our identity, our belonging, conservation and self-build. We will today learn more about these and this afternoon from various speakers. Just very quickly about the format, so everybody knows what to expect. We want this to be a happy event, a joyful event. This is all about celebration. It's about talking to each other and reminiscing and planning for the future and being inspired by the talks. Right, well, I'll introduce the speakers as they come up. We'll start with Peter Robinson. Peter attended the University of Strathclyde between 1963 and 1969, graduating with first-class honours in architecture. After a final year project dealing with tenement house improvements in Glasgow that were supervised by Jim, Peter went to study at University College London and graduated with Masters in Planning in 1972. Then Peter was seconded for the Scottish office, at that time a branch of government, to the Corporation of the City of Glasgow Planning Department for almost 2 years, from late 1972 to 1974, to assist in the formation of planning policies to enable community-based house improvements to take place in the city. Still very relevant today, I would say. He later enrolled as a part-time researcher at the University of Strathclyde, graduated PhD in the Faculty of Engineering in 1991, and as well as Jim's Glasgow experience, Peter will also outline how Jim took this legacy to the Edinburgh Old Town. Over to you, Peter.
Hello. Thank you very much for that introduction. I didn't know I provided that sort of information. It's useful to have a reminder about what you've done. But can I say to start with, I think it's a privilege to be here today, to be able to remember Jim and Christina. And it's also wonderful to see so many old friends. And welcome to the Briggait. Well, as you've heard already, Jim and I first met back in 1964, literally at the beginning of the University of Strathclyde. And I was already on a 6-year Bachelor of Architecture course at that time. And Jim became the second-year tutor. And so we got to know Jim pretty well immediately we started the second year. which I hadn't appreciated. He hadn't been long in Scotland really at that time. And so he was part of the University of Strathclyde School of Architecture, our tutor, and we kept him in touch for the full duration of the course, the 6 years. And he was, in the end, of course, one of the supervisors for the Bachelor of Architecture project, which happened to coincide, of course, with the aftermath of the Glasgow storm in January 1968, which those of you who are from Glasgow will never forget. And this highlighted the tragic state of much of Glasgow's housing, the over-intensive use of the very small houses, the tenements, arrears of maintenance over many, many years, and of course the absence of modern plumbing. And so my project was called a Rehabilitation Glasgow Study, rather misleadingly, because almost everybody I spoke to thought this was to do with alcohol. And, it took a little bit of describing to explain where I was coming from, including the external examiner, I think. But this of course reinforced a contact with Jim and Christina. And I should say that both Jim and Christina opened their house in Cumbernauld to students and were very welcoming and very hospitable. And it was a real pleasure to know Jim and Christina at a time when they had a young family. And we did all sorts of little things together, including, sledging with the children when they were young, and watching their parkside house being built, and site visits. One site visit, by the way, included Tom Marcus's children. One of them disappeared under the floor on one occasion when he fell through a part of the floor. We had to rescue him from the solum, fortunately unhurt. But there were little anecdotes like that which you just don't forget. You don't expect to see a sort of 5-year-old kiddie disappear in front of your eyes. And anyway, 1968 to 9, just to get back to Jim, with the start of a long association with Jim's association with tenements in Glasgow. And of course, these were the days of comprehensive planning. The comprehensive development areas, there were 58 of them, I think, in Glasgow at that time. And the simple approach was that great areas of the city, literally Tradeston, Bridgeton, including this, and whole areas were going to be demolished and rebuilt from scratch. And this was really an unrealistic aspiration on the part of the planners. It didn't coincide with reality. It was too basic to recognize the potential of reinforcing communities through improvement. And what my study, the last year's study, was to do was to demonstrate how you could make better use of the existing housing stock, simply and easily. And it was just to demonstrate that change was possible. I noticed that the slides are starting to come through. I'll get on to those in just a moment. But the scene was set for change back in 1968-69. And it was quite important that Glasgow, if it was to survive at all, really engaged in some innovative thinking. And Jim, of course, was to play an important part through assist in making all of this happen. He actually, through assist and his colleagues in assist, demonstrated how it was going to happen rather than what might happen. And we're going to hear much more about this, of course, and there's demonstrations outside as well. The most interesting thing about Jim, of course, apart from being an educator and his interest in assistant tenements, was that he had another career outside Glasgow, in Edinburgh. In around 1986, he was appointed the first director of the Old Town Renewal Trust. There was the City of Edinburgh New Town Conservation Committee, but the Old Town was neglected at that time, and it was under all kinds of challenges. And Jim was uniquely able, I think, to bring his experience of Glasgow and community action to the east of Scotland at a very important time for the development of Edinburgh. And it also, by the way, very topically, involved a royal visit. Prince Charles attended the office with Jim back in 1994, and here's a copy, thanks to Jocelyn, of the Old Town Crier from that time. And so Jim's efforts in the east of Scotland, I would argue, are at least as important as his efforts and energy and achievements in the west, and we mustn't really forget that. Now, he, of course, he retired at the time. The Old Town Renewal Trust became part of the Edinburgh World Heritage body, and in retirement, when sadly, of course, Christina died in 2003, he continued his work informally but usefully as a consultant for several years. And that really brings us up to SEDA and to the present. Jim influenced many people over his life as an educator by his pioneering community-based renewal work in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and now through the Student Award and SEDA. Jim changed lives, he made things happen, and we'll always remember him. Now, I've got one or two little pictures here which cover some of this work. There were pictures of the Royal College of Science and Technology in 1963, when we essentially both started. And this one is from work done in 68, 69, which showed how bed recesses might be exploited for bathrooms and kitchens. Using industrial techniques, at one point a prefabricated bathroom was assembled for 6x4 bathroom, and just by knocking a hole through from the close, you could provide a serviceable bathroom with realistic plumbing. And this had to be done on an industrial scale. Of course, it was going to make any sense at all. And this, I think, is up in the north of Glasgow. This isn't a project that Assist was involved in. We go on to the next one. Assist, with its community-based approach, attracted national attention, as many of you, of course, were aware. And the important issue of getting the scale of things going was to involve local people, and particularly when tenemental properties had been partially sold off. And getting people working together was the important vital factor, social factor in achieving the results that needed to be achieved if improvement was to take place at the right scale. Jim moved, of course, to Edinburgh. This is a little sketch from Stephen Wiltshire, the disabled illustrator who is working as an artist still. And he came and visited the Royal Incorporation of Architects in Scotland in I think 67, no, that's only 77 or thereabouts. Sebastian's nodding his head. Might have been later, right? Yeah, okay. Anyway, this is a little sketch and that he did literally on the spot. And, but of course, that is the old town. Next, I think, please. One little footnote that I'd like to add. There was another slide, I'm not quite sure what it's gone. But the footnote was that back in 1976, 50 years ago this year, there was a competition for the future of this building, and the building as it existed at that time, that's the pub on the left, by the way, as was, at least the premises of the pub. This is the face that we have at the moment of the building, as it was back 50 years ago. The competition was called the eyesore competition. That is E-Y-E-S-O-R-E. What do we do with the old fish market? And it was an ideas competition. I think my own contribution was to suggest it might be used for retail space. But I entered that competition, and I'm very pleased to have returned yesterday to see that the building did indeed survive and is a very usable and attractive space. And this little tribute today is an example of the product of the energies of Assist and Jim and many others too. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Peter. Now, next, we've got not one but two speakers. Phil McCafferty and Fraser Stewart. So Phil has been an architect with Assist Architects since 1976. He joined instigate in Glasgow to help with the housing crisis and the community-based housing-led regeneration of the city. Phil is a supporter of sustainable and ecological approaches to most things and likes trying out ideas at home, like unfired clay. He is indebted to Jim for a chance to take part in this quiet revolution and a job since '76. Also thanks to Fiona Stevenson and all at Assist. Fraser started his career as a development officer at Glasgow Housing Association in 1983. He has been the director of New Gorbals Housing Association since 1992, and over the last 34 years has led multiple award-winning housing developments and place-making projects for the Gorbals community. Over to you, gentlemen.